And just like that, that's all she wrote. How is everybody doing tonight? This is MYG Jeffy T 3285 back with another video. And I'm just recapping the Game 4 Brooklyn Nets loss to the Boston Celtics by the final score of 116 to 112, as the Boston Celtics have come into this series and they have swept the heavily favored at the beginning of the season, one of the championship contenders at the beginning of the season, the Brooklyn Nets, by a series sweep 4-0. Kevin Durant had a very, very pedestrian and poor first few games of this series. But at least in Game 4, he didn't shoot as great as hoped, but he did at least score 39 points. And Seth Curry came back and had a very strong game himself with 26 points. Kyrie Irving was a little off. Most of the game didn't really show up until he made some big shots at the end, scoring 20. But it just was not enough. Jason Tatum, he scored 29 points, but fouled out with about 2 minutes left in the game. Jaylen Brown scored 22. Marcus Smart had 20. Al Horford had 13. And just to sum up this series, pretty much, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to yell because I've already exasperated all the energy out of my body from this series. The Celtics just pretty much out-physicaled the Nets. They outbeat them on the defensive end. They hustled better. They're just more physical. They're stronger. They rotated better. They're better coached. They hit their clutch shots when needed. Their two big stars rose to the occasion when needed be. But with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum both stepping up and having big games the past couple of games, especially in Brooklyn. Marcus Smart, who I said at the beginning of the series was going to be the biggest X factor, and what did he end up doing? Played stellar defense against Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and also contributed with big-time points, great assists to his teammates. The guy's he's Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. He's actually a hell of a damn scorer, too. And Al Horford, guy's 36 years old and still turned back the clock enough to have a big series against the Nets. Then you had Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Robert Williams came back, Dan Tice. All these guys on the Celtics, they made their shots, they made the plays, they got the rebounds, they passed it to their teammates, they got right into the Nets in terms of their defensive shift. And the Nets just had no answers. No answers at all. And the Celtics are the better team. I mean, there's really nothing more that I can say as a fan. If I'm just being dead honest, the Celtics are a better team. They have been saying that, and I've been watching it as every other person has been watching the series. The Celtics were just the better team in this series, and they showed it. They did everything right, and the Nets just couldn't get out of their own way, and maybe what had a lot to do is the Nets, with everything that happened to them this season, maybe they just weren't able to gel in time to put something together. I just think they're too small of a team. The Nets are too small of a team. Their big guys are either older towards the end of their careers, or they're just not big enough or physical enough to handle guys like Robert Williams and Danny Tice. They don't have consistent enough shooters. And I can't even going to say this after what happened last year. Joe Harris was a big-time loss for this team. When he went down and he couldn't come back with that second ankle surgery, the Nets missed his shooting. The Nets missed his outside shooting and his ability to create some shots on his own. Because Joe Harris would have been that third guy that could have showed up and helped this team. And don't even get me started with this whole Ben Simmons stuff. That Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted earlier that's saying that the Nets brass and Ben Simmons have been coming together on how to work for his mental and physical health. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Ben Simmons had a chance to show up in games 3 and 4, take some of the pain, go out there and do something about it and help this team. He didn't. He took the easy way out, didn't play. Yeah, maybe he's more hurt than any of us are so I can't say that. He didn't play, he didn't help out his team. Just sat there on the bench. and now the Nets are going home. And it's going to be a very interesting offseason. I know Wojnarowski already tweeted that Steve Nash is probably coming back as the head coach. Was a little disappointing for me to hear after what this team has done the past couple of years, because I just think Joe Tsai is just not in the mood to change coaches, because he doesn't feel that Steve Nash got enough of a chance with the tumultuous season this team had, combined with the Kevin Durant torn AC or sprained MCL that he had throughout the first 6 weeks of the season, which pretty much took away the Nets from being a top seed in this whole conference to pretty much just fighting just to make the playoffs. Kyrie Irving missing most of the games this season because of the vaccine mandate. The James Harden drama that happened, and him being traded at the trade deadline and taking him out of the lineup for Ben Simmons, who didn't play one single minute or one single second for this year at all for the Nets. The Nets have some key decisions to make this offseason. Got a bunch of guys that are free agents right now. What are you going to do with your center position? Because LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, Nick Claxton are all free agents going into the season. Are you going to bring any of these guys back? Are you going to let them go and try to build and get some big guys in the draft? You're going to see how Deron Sharp develops in the offseason. Maybe you could have him as potential guy. You could see how he plays in the center position. What are you going to do about Bruce Brown? He had some moments with the Nets. Actually was their third best player for a good amount of the time after Harden was traded. Do you try to bring him back, or do you let him go and try to replenish that in free agency, a trade, or in the draft? What are you going to do with Kyrie Irving? He's a free agent right now currently too. If he doesn't pick up his option, he's a free agent. So do you try to extend him? Do you maybe try to go a different direction? Kevin Durant right now is signed and will be here. You still have young guys like Sharp, Cam Thomas. You have Kessler Edwards. You got Patty Mills coming back. So you still got some players on this team that will be back next year. But the question is, how is this Nets team going to get better? How are they going to be able to get better? Because there's really not a lot of movement this team could be. And if Ben Simmons is in the long-term plans, will Ben Simmons actually get on the court, get himself in shape, get his mental, whatever's going on with him mentally, will he get that in order? And he will be able to contribute for this team because they need him. And the Nets need Ben Simmons badly. But I mean, just to say this, I've been a Nets fan, a real Nets fan, not one of these bandwagon Net fans that have come on board since the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving signings or trades, however you want to say it. I have lived and died with this team since '93 when Derek Coleman and Kenny Anderson were roaming around at the Brendan Byrne Arena. I've watched Kendall Gill, Armin Gilliam, and those players when the stadium was named the Continental Airlines Arena. I got to watch, luckily, the best moments of the Nets that I ever got to see when Jason Kidd was traded to the Nets, with Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson, Kerry Kittles, Lucius Harris, and those guys. Just come short of winning a championship in 2001. We didn't have a shot in 2000, but the Lakers were just a juggernaut. I got to see the 12-70 team, which was just the worst team I've ever seen. I got to watch the 2013 team after they pretty much mortgaged their future. Thanks, Billy King, by the way. They mortgaged their future for Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and Paul Pierce, who were all over the hill. And Darren Williams, who was just not the guy that we thought we were when we signed him. Joe Johnson, just couldn't get it done. Brook Lopez, solid player, but not a franchise cornerstone. I've had to watch the 2013 team blow a lead and lose to the Chicago Bulls that year. I've had to watch losing season after losing season with this team being an absolute joke for years. And then I finally have to get to see some hope with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving coming on here. Seeing them develop with some of these young kids, but the Nets got selfish. Traded that way a young player like Karis LeVert, an emerging young center in Jared Allen, a good piece on this team in Spencer Dinwiddie, because they wanted to try to get the 3 stars, and it ended up blowing up in their face because James Harden, while he had some moments, he didn't even last with this team for 2 seasons. In fact, he barely even lasted a season and a half, coupled with injuries, which he had last year in the playoffs. And then this past season, with all the expectations this team had, and they get bounced in the first round by a Boston Celtics team who's clearly just a better team overall. So this is probably one of the lowest moments I could say as a longtime Brooklyn Nets fan, New Jersey Nets fan, whatever you want to call me. This is really just something that just, if you're an actual real Nets fan, this might be the lowest of the lows that you can even have, and that's even worse. It could even be worse at a point than the 12 and 70 team, because this team had major expectations, and 2 years in a row they come up short. So I don't know what direction this team has to go next season to improve, but they need to get bigger. They need to get more physical. They need to get guys that are going to be able to hit clutch shots. They need to be coached better. So Steve Nash, if you're definitely going to be the coach going into next season, you better start adjusting your plays better. You better start adjusting your lineups better, because this was pathetic what I had to watch. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, both you guys have a whole lot to prove now, because you guys came up small when the Nets needed them for most of the series. And you guys have a lot to prove going into next season. It's a whole lot of... It's going to be an interesting offseason for this team, because they have major expectations. If Durant's still here and Irving's still here, assuming you could still get together, like some of these guys might come back, or you can just develop some of your young players you currently have on the roster, or even you're able to draft well and make some solid trades or signings. This team is still going to be one of the better teams in the East. It's just, how much time does this team have left until that's it? Because this was as heartbreaking, as infuriating, as just, I don't want to say embarrassing, but this was as bad as it gets, where the team has much expectations as this team did, and they just couldn't even get out of the first round. In fact, they get swept in their own home court this Monday against the Celtics. They're one of their biggest rivals, so this is as crushing can be. The Nets are now getting ready for the offseason. The Boston Celtics have moved on to the next round. And who's going to be on this team next year? A lot of questions that need to be asked about the Nets, but they need to get physical. If Joe Harris is still here next year, you got to get him healthy. Hopefully he stays healthy, because they need his shooting. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to have a lot to prove this year. What are you going to get for some of your young players? Is Bruce Brown going to come back? Nick Claxton? Ben Simmons, if he's still here? What are you going to get out of Ben Simmons? Seth Curry, if he's still here? You got to pretty much might have to fix the entire center position, because there's a chance that Claxton, Drummond, Aldridge, and Griffin, some of these guys might retire, and some of them might just go on to somewhere else. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason, but that's just it for my recap series. The Boston Celtics win tonight, 116-112, as they sweep the Brooklyn Nets in a very, very difficult series. The Celtics were just the better team. Congratulations to the Boston Celtics and Ime Udoka and the entire team. Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford. You guys were all great. You guys did a fantastic job. Good luck in the next round, but that's all I have to say tonight. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. See what happens in the offseason for the Nets. It's going to be a very interesting one. Have a great rest of your Monday night. Take it easy. Peace.